Wondering about the construction. I was wondering about
I know,
construction.
I was too. I saw it this morning when I came to the post office and I thought, oh boy.
Okay,
Okay,
you are.
we'll call the hearing to order. I'm Jean Mullen, I'm Chair of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. I have, to my left is Paul Saunier, who is the Vice Chair. To my right here is Barb Prendergast, who is the Clerk. Tom Myrick and Barry Fish are two more members, and Cindy Picos and Pat Gaudette are our alternates. It is approximately 10 after 3. And this will be the hearing in the application for a variance by Greg and Karen Vandermeer, who have built a house on a property off Tea House Lane. The house, when it was completed, and the deck on the front of it with the overhang, the roof, was found to go into the setback. There's a 20-foot setback between one property line and the structure on the property line. The case that after reviewing it, I accepted the variance in part from my own lack of knowledge, because we had not addressed an equitable waiver of dimensional requirements before, which is a separate application and has slightly different criteria. In going through some case law, I realized that this actually was more appropriately, and it should have been an application for an equitable waiver of dimensional requirements. So we are going to proceed, if the applicants don't mind, we will proceed with the information from the variance that they supplied, their application for variance, the information in there, and a little bit additional testimony, which I think will take care of all the criteria needed for the other application for equitable waiver of dimensional requirements. There must be an acronym for that. Anyway, so what I would like to do first is just give a very short synopsis, I guess, of what occurred, or actually perhaps I could have Mrs. Vandermeer, did you say you were going to testify? Why don't I have you come forward and you can just give a short explanation of what happened. And then I'm going to allow Chief Noyes to testify so that he can get back to his duties. Okay? Either one, yeah, just take one.
Hello, I'm Karen Vandermeer. Thank you all for taking the time to come here today. So this is like very frustrating for me because I'm a rule follower and we spent a lot of money on an engineering company to make sure that the log kit that we were buying fit up appropriately on our property. They wrote out a plan, it was not cheap. And we thought up until a month ago that everything was fine and that our excavator dug the hole perfectly. And the bank comes out every once in a while just to check on things, and they measured and found that he was just slightly off when he dug his hole. So everything after that just kept happening and we had no idea. I don't know if you saw or if you can see, the shape of our lot is quite unique. It's a little bit like going down a mountain. And basically, I can pass this around if anyone wants to see. There's just a tiny little nook in here, which is causing this issue. So unfortunately, it's not a case of something that we can just shorten our porch because the log cabin kit, the logs go directly from the back all the way to the front of the porch roof, which holds the entire structure together. When we did find out about it, the roof was not on yet. So when Chief Noyes came out, we found that there was about a 9-inch, was it 9 inches?
Mm-hmm.
9-inch difference in the structure. But then looking further in the plan, I realized that the roof will hang over another 12 inches. So I wanted to make sure that was all in there. We can't change the shape of the roof either. So unfortunately, we would probably have to start from scratch, to be safe, and if we were not granted this.
Okay, and I think that's a good summary of, you know, where your problems are. Chief Noyes, do you wanna, is it chief or?
Yeah, you can still call me chief.
Okay, if you wanna come up here.
Does he have his handcuffs?
No, he doesn't do that anymore. Can you identify yourself and where you work?
Yes, so I'm David Noyes, I'm the Director of Public Safety. I also serve as the building inspector and code enforcement officer.
Okay, thank you. And you were involved in part with this. I noticed the permit was with Chris Hodges, your predecessor,
Correct.
but you were involved in part with the inspections and,
I was involved in part, especially during, this particular section. The one part that wasn't is there was a foundation inspection done back in February, and that was Chris Hodges. And just based on the notes, he's not here today, he's in Montana.
Yeah.
So, but based on the notes, there were no issues at the time.
okay,
When we inspect foundations, we're looking at the structure of the foundation and then in the foundation in relation to these setbacks. So not always does the foundation, once the house gets built out, obviously
this,
those setbacks can change, but when we look at it at the time, it's just the foundation.
so the foundation was properly cited for, as far as you could tell, for where the setback was.
There was no issue with the setback as far as the foundation was concerned.
And I don't even know whether it could have been done in February, but whether there was any, whether he looked at the site plan and then did all the measurements all over again from like the foundation, because the foundation.
They'll typically measure if it's anywhere, whatever the closest boundary is.
Mhm.
They can rough measure with tape
Okay.
measure.
But that would
We
not.
can usually tell within a few, if it's
Yeah.
close,
Yeah.
then we'll look at it more closely.
Yeah.
But in this case, the foundation was well past the.
Yeah, so that wasn't the problem.
Yeah, when you say foundation, you're talking about foundation of the structure or the foundation of the porch in the front?
Foundation of the structure itself.
Okay,
Had the
Just
basement been
just
put
the
in by then?
cement. Yes, it was just the footings and the foundation walls.
Okay. So at that time,
No sonotubes, none of that.
yeah, so
they weren't installed, so you couldn't inspect them.
No.
But if you measured to the foundation and you knew through the plans that were going to be sonotubes for the porch and we're going to extend another couple feet, wouldn't you take that into account to determine if you were going to be within the setback? You can't measure the foundation to determine the correct setback. You got to measure at the sonotube. Right?
The sonotubes aren't there at the time, so it's a foundation inspection. Sonotubes are not part of that inspection.
so that was just to look at whether it was up to code as far as the foundation itself.
But he just said it measured setbacks.
Correct.
For the
In relation to the foundation.
I think,
Okay.
They don't put sonotubes, there's no sonotubes.
No, but if
in place at the time. This is a very-
take a look at the plans, you can see that there's a porch that extends another 4 feet. Was that taken into account when you determined the setback was?
I didn't determine the setback, Chris Hodges did, so I can't tell you
Okay,
what he thought
okay.
at the time. The notations say that there was no issues with the foundation.
Yeah.
And that's typically what we look at.
that's my understanding. Okay, I don't have any further questions. Does anybody? Barry? No. Okay, thank you, Mr. Director. Chief, you are excused. And okay, we will go back to Mrs. Vandermeer, and can I have you identify yourself, please, and where you live?
Karen Vandermoor, currently live on Mountain Brook, condos 21 Mountain Brook Way, unit 17, building a house on Tea House Lane, number 17.
As I explained momentarily to you just before we started, the application that you filed was for a variance, which under normal circumstances would be appropriate for some of the, when you need a correction for something. There is another application though, however, that I determined is more applicable, and that's an application for an equitable waiver of dimensional requirements, as I said. That application has 4 criteria that must be met. And they are, I gave you the statutory part of it. And I will summarize. I think what I'm going to do is just summarize what they are rather than. One of the requirements is that the violation of dimensional requirements was not noticed or discovered by the owner or agent or any municipal officer until after the structure was completed. That's one of them. The second one is that the resulting was not an outcome of ignorance or the law or failure to inquire, but by good faith error in measurements by owner or agent, or an error in ordinance interpretation by municipal interpretation, but that was not the case here. There was no error there. It was from what you've said in your variance. Well, I'll have you testify to it, but the third one is this physical dimension violation does not constitute a public or private nuisance, nor diminish value of other property, nor adversely affect present or future uses of other property. And the fourth one is the cost of correcting the error so far outweighs any public benefits to be gained that it would be inequitable to require the violation to be corrected. No. And you understand this actually will not be a variance. If we determine that the waiver is appropriate, then it will be, it will not become a non-conforming use. You will just have a normal accepted plot site.
Yes.
As far as questions go, I think we could go ahead and start and address, and you can rely on your variance application and your own knowledge to help with the questions. But the first criteria is that it was not discovered until after it was completed. And my understanding is that the bank was the one that discovered it and notified you, and then you notified Chief Noyes.
Correct.
Is that correct? And prior to that time, had your contractor who did the foundation work, did that contractor say anything or do anything that might have given you an understanding that he was off a few inches in citing it?
As soon as we found out, I reached out to him and he immediately was like, there's no way that's, I was correct. I measured a million times. He tried to fight with the bank. And I wasn't gonna go there, so I just started the process for the variance. So he did not agree that it was incorrect. He still thinks his measurements were right. So, so no, there was no reason for it. I think it was just an error in calculation.
Can I ask a question? Did you have an instrument survey done? Because a mortgage plot plan is not necessarily an accurate.
Yes,
Okay, you did.
Horizon Engineering
Okay,
did a plot plan.
okay. So the bank was real close to.
They used our plot, well, so we sent them the plot plan from the engineering company after, and they said that we were still encroaching on the.
It seems to me the first criteria is met. First criteria is met.
We'll work on it when you don't have any questions. The second criteria is that it was not an outcome of ignorance of the law, but good faith error in measurement by owner or agent, your agent being, well, I guess your husband was the general contractor.
Well, technically, me.
Oh, that was you. Okay. Sorry.
But we did research, we got all of the information from the town, we read all the rules, we knew the rules. That's why we paid to have the engineering firm come out and double check and put pins in and everything. So we definitely fully aware of what the laws were, and
And you were certainly aware of the 20-foot setback.
yes,
Yeah.
and we were very confident that it was done correctly. and our excavator had the plan, he had everything, so.
Question there.
Yeah. So if the pins were in the correct place, if they were, why wouldn't the foundation have been placed in the proper where the pins were?
I believe that he miscalculated when he dug his hole.
But he would have known where the pins were to put the foundation.
Correct. The pins were in place when he dug his hole.
So he didn't measure appropriately where the pin was to where the foundation should have been.
That is my understanding.
When was the foundation put in?
August,
Of 2021,
yes.
August?
Mhm.
But
So-
you didn't go forward then with anything until spring?
So we had our original builder who went bankrupt and lost our money, so we had a new builder. So there was a couple months of a pause,
Okay,
but the foundation was in before we lost that builder. So the porch was not put on until he started end of January, so February 1st basically is when we started building off from the foundation.
okay.
So judging by looking at the Horizons engineering plan itself and then where it shows the setbacks, it shows that you might be planning a deck in the back,
What do I?
and then the point of that deck is right at the setback.
That is not correct.
Maybe I'm not looking at it.
The back, the bank didn't have any problems with the back deck, so I would have to research that.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is you're as far back on that as you can be and still meet the setback. That's my point.
Correct.
Okay, so now we look at the front where the issue is.
Yeah.
It shows a little porch there, that porch is fine, well within the setback. The front, not the porch, the way to get into the porch, you're gonna have a front entrance on the porch, and then you have
Oh,
a
so this,
side
we
porch.
decided to not do the front stairs.
Oh, okay.
So we're just doing the side stairs.
Okay, so if you go down the farthest point, it seems to me that based on the setback that there should be, I'm thinking if you look at the corner there, there's still a space there, probably 4 feet or so between where the deck is and you start going into the setback. It seems as though even if you move the house, can I show you what I'm talking about?
So the engineering firm did place our house plans, like on the lot, exactly where it was all.
What I'm trying to point out, here's your deck,
Because I have a problem with this.
and then here's your 20 feet setback.
Right.
So the distance between here and here, even if you go off by a little bit, because that looks like about 4 feet.
Right, it was just off a little too much.
I have the same question.
And what I'm trying to point out is, do we have a problem with the setback? I'm just looking at it from that perspective. The distance between the front of here and here appears to be 4 or 5 feet before you even start the 20 feet. So if the house was moved this way, not much, I mean, you still, what I'm trying to say is, are you still within the setback?
I
I'm trying to.
I know, I got what you're saying. Okay.
I had some of the same question.
20-foot line.
Yeah, they show.
This,
That-
when you, I'm,
That's-
that's
that's the
very,
problem.
when you're looking at, this is the 20 feet setback is there.
This is the
It comes
roof.
around like
Right.
that.
Get
And
married
it
on
looks as
thinking
though
about
that should be
It's a circle, it's
Right.
gotta draw a
within the
circle.
setback, but actually it's that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like,
Because in your
And so
variance,
a
It's
piece,
an
a piece of the arc
that-
hits,
Right.
The setback that is going
A
not.
lot of it is
conforming.
conforming.
It's based
And
from the property owners.
spend a lot of
Here.
time building
And it
projects
goes
up here.
within the
Residential.
driveway, or your driveway and their driveway. So I'm having a little
I
trouble.
think it's this, and it is possible the bank, this was a shock to us, so it is possible the bank made an error, but we just have to go with what they have.
There's only
Is
one
this where
butter.
they're saying?
He's saying that
Do
this,
they care?
that
Yeah,
this
here.
is too close to that,
So,
so that he rotated the whole, like, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Oh, they got rotated.
Yes.
This is not going to.
So that's where the error was.
and the,
I never thought of that.
I should have.
I mean,
gone
that's
with
the only
butter.
way I
That's
can-
the question.
What she
The
said.
butter, the butter house is
Yeah,
clearly
yeah.
20 feet off the other side, so. If
So
they're not,
that's
if they're
what the
not
bank
here
is saying, and
screening,
that's what it's supposed to be.
then where's the view?
Are you looking at map? You understand what she's saying?
The
She
design
thinks
of
that
the house was
Supposed to be.
this
Here,
here,
this is here,
that this is the part that's within the
And now it's
setback. And
here.
she thinks that that the site foundation was
Okay.
located this way
wow,
and out that way. So that's why this corner is the one that's within the setback, not this corner, which looks as though it should be this one.
Well, the bank's, the bank's drawing is not the same as that.
Yeah,
That's the accurate
This,
drawing. That's
this
the
is
sketch.
accurate, this is,
That's sketch.
this
not-
doesn't even look to come in the same
Yeah,
spot, so that's
relationship-
why I asked the question.
Yeah.
Mortgage block plan is never.
Yeah.
That's what-
Yeah, go ahead.
Is,
the whole thing.
the area where the setback is in question
No, I understand.
is very, that lot line is very strange. It jogs in. Do you have any idea what the logic is behind that odd shaped lot?
It would be a guess, but I know that originally there was one owner who owned the entire property, both lots.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if it's public record, I tried to find it, but they must have gotten a subdivision. And the only way to write it so that it followed the subdivision rules, they had to make this weird shape. I don't know why, but
Okay.
On the abutter is, the Amicus, that property is there. I'm Frank McGrain,
I'm sorry, Frank, do you want to testify or?
Oh, no, I mean, I'm sitting there, I didn't
Okay.
know about it. I mean, I can tell you that lot's been there, it's been double lots forever. It's been a house with an extra lot. For as long as I've been on
That was part of Patty Saba's house, right?
It was Patty Saba's house.
And then, well, Grimes owned all of that property.
Yep, Grimes home from.
And then the tea house and then Patty's house.
Exactly.
And then the extra prop that they bought was part of,
Yep.
an extra part of the whole property.
No, it could have been, they needed 20,000, I'm just guessing, they may have needed 20,000 feet to get to a buildable lot, who knows?
Yeah.
So they clipped a little bit up the back lot.
Okay,
As an aside, but if you go down Osceola, trying to think of the people's names. They own the house. Stuff. They own, the people that own the back lot had a small house. And they own both lots. I forgot her name. but
That's okay.
And she owned the front lot and the back lot. And I think she just built a house in the back lot. When the Stuxton bought the front lot, they found out pretty much all the way back to the setback line. They didn't know. The guy in back, which had the older house, which is on the golf course, basically he lost a lot of his privacy, if you will, because I think it's just the way to play it, just put it there with good. No one mentioned, I think that house was built in 1948.
Yeah.
Okay, just so this is not the, it's the same
very
thing, you have a
odd
big
lot.
piece of land. You own both parcels,
Yeah.
and they're trying to stop us to where things go.
But
And that's the same.
it's not in dispute that a piece of your roof is inside the 20-foot setback. That's really, all. It's not in dispute that there's a small piece of the roof. in
within the lot
20-foot
line.
setback.
Oh, within the setback. The third criteria, and I have no further questions on the second criteria, which was, we got sort of off on that, but it was not in the outcome of ignorance of law, but good faith error in measurements by owner or agent. The third criteria is the violation was not a public or private nuisance, nor diminished value of the property or use. And you have somewhat addressed that in your variance, if you'd like to speak to that for a minute about what your thoughts are and whether it, well, I don't think a public nuisance could possibly be considered, but private nuisance to any of your abutters or would diminish the value of their property or their use of their property.
I don't believe that it diminishes any value. As we talked about the strange shape of the lot, that current owner of that house accidentally put their driveway across our lot line because they didn't know, and we're fine with it. But I don't believe that they would feel that there's a, anything diminished from there. Because they, I'm not making any sense. I don't think it's visible, so I don't believe that it makes would change.
So is the immediate abutter here?
No,
Do they have any concerns?
no, I mean, I can't speak for them, but
They haven't expressed
They haven't
any.
reached
they know about it, we've talked to them, and
And they received notice of it.
They received notice, they haven't showed up, they haven't complained. Okay, thank you.
If I may, I had one more thing, just as I said, Karen didn't mention it, but.
Frank, we're gonna have to have you come up and testify.
Chairman, so Karen Walker was, staked
Wait,
out.
can you identify yourself?
I'm Frank Variance. I live on Ray Lane, I have the property.
Are you the butter? The-
Side,
You're
not
not the
I'm in
abutter?
back, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
backwards, side.
She, the whole lot was staked out with stakes and lines and string, surveyor strings, okay? I think one of them still there, the one between us is still there. And the whole property was staked out. And then they put the stakes in the 20-foot setbacks with ties on that. And there was no issue between us. I mean, it was a straight line. But then when you went down to the side of this house, the California house, it was, it was pretty jagged, pretty interesting, quite frankly, to see all the jogs, maybe 150 feet deep, I don't know. It was 4 or 5 jogs. Pretty conspicuous, pretty interesting to have that intricate of, change of direction. It really was.
Yeah.
And so they did everything. It was all, my point is, it wasn't a roof over. They had stakes, they had lines, they had sticks, they had everything out there. So if they missed up, it wasn't by, it wasn't intentional, because they had spent the time to determine all the boundaries, et cetera, et cetera. Quite frankly, it was to some benefit. I found out I had a little more land than I thought I had. I never really paid attention to it. But that's it.
So all due diligence was done.
Yeah, I mean, for me, just from sitting there and watching that lot for all those years, just sit there. And now all of a sudden it was completely staked out, and they had 5 abutters. You got the California house, you got me, you got crazy, you got me, and I think everyone else back there. So it was all staked out. It was really, I mean, the guy, whoever did it,
Four
did a good job.
buttons. 4 buttons.
So
Only really
You,
one back.
you've indicated in your variance, and you might have also testified to this again, that you want, you can be excused.
I'm excused,
You're
okay.
excused. So, Mrs. Vandenberg, you indicated that when you look at the part that juts into the setback, that actually does not even face or involve the property, the living area of the property that it abuts.
correct, there's just bushes and trees right there, so you wouldn't, it's not visible to anyone where that line is. Looking at the stakes.
Okay. And does anybody have any questions on that issue, where, now that we know where it is?
So I'm a line of sight butter.
Excuse me, can you come forward if you want to testify?
I think.
This is sort of, this is all being done out of order, but
Sorry, my apologies.
It's whatever.
we're listening, I do want
I
to.
live at, my name's Richard Smith, or Rick Smith. I live at 53 Boulder Path, Unit 3, so I'm in the back of the building where the gazebo's on across from the tennis courts. So my back deck and patio area look directly out on the house being built. So, in no way affected by this, this situation, and I believe my property values are diminished as a result of the issue. And just, I guess, as an aside, knowing what these guys have gone through to try to get this place built and the frustrations and situation that it's finally come together and have this come up is just, I would have lost it. I think she's doing a great job keeping with this matter, and to have this come up and approach it the way that she is and working with y'all to make sure that they can move forward is would be much appreciated by me as well. Because I really think
Did you get her?
Rick Smith?
Richard Smith, 53 older path.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, we're still doing criteria by criteria for testimony that as well. So we're on to the fourth one, which I think you've addressed a number of times, which the fourth criteria basically is that the cost of correcting the error would be inequitable to require such correction, given the public benefit to the public benefit. And essentially, as I say, I don't know, making you move that, what public benefit there would be. You've indicated, and I assume the architect has said this, or you have some basis for it, that you can't just change the porch because of this, I don't know what you call it. This
There are
is,
two structural beams that go from the back to the front that several other beams need to connect to. So if we cut that beam, it would completely change the structural support system for the house.
and it would no longer be sound.
Correct.
So the only thing would be to take it down and start over.
Right, and the cost, we're gonna talk about cost, when we bought that kit, it's now more than double the cost to buy that same kit,
Wow,
so.
that's the way everything with housing is going. Anybody have any questions about the cost and the public benefit? Barry? Does anybody have any other questions of Mrs. Vandermeer at all?
Just that you're not questioning at all.
If you want to, okay,
That the bank.
if you
made a
want-
mistake.
to address a question, you want to,
No, I just wanted to add, when they had the house delivered, okay, in place, no, it was all in the kit, you know, all the pallets and stuff were within the string that they had put up. All the components of the house hadn't been built, it was just laying like that, it's logs. It was all compacted and tied up, et cetera. It was all within the string that the engineer had put in there. So they were very conspicuous of saying, let me stay on my land, even though, just lumber, basically. So they were, I was impressed, quite frankly, because of the jog in the line. They were always within at least a foot of that line.
okay, Mrs. Vandermeer, I
They were
think
mindful of it.
I'll excuse you. And because there are no further questions for you, and unless you want, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
You had a question, about the bank?
Yeah, you don't.
I
have-
don't know, I assume that we've had a great experience with the bank.
Yeah.
They're one of them, Meredith Village is a good bank. I assume that their person measured correctly. So I have to assume that they're right.
No other questions? Okay, excuse me.
This one is yours.
Yeah, you can just leave that there. Is there anyone else that wants to
Thank you.
testify? Pardon?
I just said thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, don't mean to be employed. Anybody else that feels they need to testify, wants to testify directly to any of the criteria or the facts?
I'll just make a comment, David Noyes, that, our 20-foot setbacks are there for a reason. And the reason why those 20-foot setbacks are there is when there are errors and mistakes that are made, they're not infringing on the property next door. There is that buffer. And that's the whole reason why we have those setbacks, is to take into account that we're not building right on top of each other. And to take into account situations like this where there are errors made, they are still on their property.
Yeah.
And not infringing.
Right.
On the other person's property because, the whole intent is to maintain those setbacks.
Right.
And I just wanted to just remind the board of
Thank you.
the way that I see when I'm looking at these properties and measuring for those setbacks. Certainly, we strive to make sure that we don't infringe on any of those at any time, but every once in a while, these things happen. And the reason why we have a 20-foot is just that. There is that buffer.
Thank you. If there are no further testimony and no further questions, we can go ahead and I'll close the hearing and we'll go on to deliberations. We've all had a chance to hear and look at the criteria that should have, that are involved in the equitable waiver of dimensional requirements. And I think the best thing we can do is just go through the criteria and say what we think about it as to what's happening. The first one was it's not discovered until after it was completed. And this seems to be the bank that discovered it after it was completely done and the porch was up, or the deck, porch and roof over that. I don't have any problems with seeing that criteria is met.
Absolutely.
Nobody.
Agreed.
The second one is that it wasn't an outcome of ignorance of law or just a good faith error in measurement. And given what Mrs. Vandermeer says about the agent who was positive that he cited it correctly, which apparently he didn't if you look at the drawings, but it seems that, they certainly had, the drawings were all
There was
compliant.
no evil intent.
Pardon?
There was no evil intent.
No evil involved at all, no, I mean, I think it was a good day there, and, they certainly, the drawings structure show they met trying to meet the setbacks, which would be the relevant one. So I don't have a problem with that being met, does anybody? Barry, are you okay?
Yeah.
The third one is a violation of public or private nuisance. It's not a violation of public or private nuisance or a public or private nuisance, nor does it diminish the value of the property or use. I think that if the affected neighbors thought that it diminished their value of their property, they would be here. to
They
say
would be
something.
here.
Pardon?
They'd be here
They'd be
complaining,
here.
They would be here.
which is why
complaining.
they're notified certified mail, so.
And
have their
I can't
opportunity.
say that 21 inches for the roof and only 9 inches for the deck itself
So,
is a great diminution of their, their property rights. So I just don't see, that there was anything here that would affect the abutters, the one butter that is affected particularly much, and also the fact that, it's actually on the neighbor's driveway, which she says is within their setback, but, it's the neighbor's driveway that is affected. It doesn't like just towards the house itself, the living house. So I don't have a problem with that one. And if anybody does speak up. And finally, the fourth one, the cost of correcting the error, given what she said about the, would be, being equitable to
Pretty
require
clear.
correction. Given what she said about the architectural drawings and the nature of the supporting beams, it would, either they would have to live with a possibly structurally deficient house, or they would have to redo it, removing the whole house, foundation and all. Is that correct? Or do you all see it that way? You do?
Yes.
It doesn't, there's no alternative to it. There's no alternative to
No.
changing
there's
the
no
porch.
alternative. Yeah, I agree.
It's part of the structure.
I think that one's met too. So, anybody want to move to what our decision should be.
Yeah, I move we vote in favor of granting the equitable waiver of dimensional requirement.
I
Okay,
second.
all those in, Harry second, Paul second.
I second.
Okay,
All right, so
and do all agree?
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, you're done. And this is not, as I say, it's not a variance, because if we granted you a variance, it would be you would be a non-conforming structure that was permitted to exist. But an equitable waiver is just that. The requirement does not apply to this particular part, so you're relieved.
I'm gonna get something in writing.
Yes.
You have it on tape. It's on recorded.
she needs something from us in writing to bring to
Yes,
the
the
bank.
bank has frozen.
She needs something from us. to
Yeah,
bring
Yes,
to the
right.
well, no,
bank.
I have, yeah, we have a decision form, and since we're all agreed on the decision, I will just follow the form, because
Excellent.
I don't think I need to explain any of our decisions. It's pretty simple. So your structure is in conformance,
Which is better than a variance.
which is
Yeah.
better than a variance.
It's a good last day of school game. Thank you.
But that does not mean, according to the rules, that does not mean you can do it again. Don't assume.
I will not hire the famous.
If there's no further business before the board,
I move we adjourn.
thank you. Okay, got the same rules.
Yeah, we're good.
Good.